What happens when humans no longer fear death? When famine, plague, and war, the ancient gods of suffering, are finally chained by our own hands. For the first time in history, we are not praying to survive. We are programming evolution, designing bodies, editing life. But if Homo sapiens has conquered nature, what comes next? Will we become gods, creators of life, of intelligence, of destiny itself? Or will the algorithms we've built quietly take the throne we never meant to surrender? Picture it, a future where immortality is a product. Where happiness can be engineered. Where your choices are predicted before you even make them. And in that dazzling new world, what will it mean to be human? This is Homo Deus, a brief history of tomorrow, written by Yuval Harari, a journey beyond the limits of biology, beyond the walls of time, into the heart of our next great evolution. Now, let's begin the audiobook. If you are ready, let me open the very first page of this journey. Chapter 1. The New Human Agenda for Thousands of Years. The human story was written in hunger, disease, and fear. Our ancestors spent sleepless nights praying that the rains would come, that the plague would pass, that the soldiers would not reach their village by morning. In that ancient drama, the gods ruled the stage and humans were trembling actors reciting lines of survival. But something extraordinary has happened, something no other species has ever achieved. In the last few centuries, we rewrote the script. We didn't just adapt to nature. We overpowered it. Today, in most corners of the world, a child is more likely to die from eating too much sugar than from starvation. You are more likely to end your life with a heart attack in a comfortable bed than to be devoured by a lion or slain in battle. For the first time in history, humans have wrestled control of their destiny from the gods and placed it in their own hands. Let's take a moment to understand how revolutionary this is. In the year 1300, famine stalked every continent. A bad harvest could wipe out an entire kingdom. In medieval Europe, the phrase "acts of God" was not a metaphor, it was literal terror. Crops failed, livestock died, and peasants starved because they believed heaven had turned its face away. But in the 20th and 21st centuries, something miraculous unfolded. The Green Revolution. In the 1940s, scientists like Norman Borlaug experimented with genetically superior strains of wheat and rice. By the 1960s, countries like India and Mexico that once suffered devastating famines were feeding hundreds of millions. Within decades, the balance of power between nature and humanity shifted forever. The biblical curse of "by the sweat of thy brow shalt thou eat bread" was finally lifted, not by divine grace, but by science. That's the first pillar of the new human agenda. We have conquered famine, the second ancient enemy. Was even crueler, plague. For centuries, disease was an invisible assassin. The Black Death of the 14th century killed 1 in every 3 Europeans. Entire families vanished in a week. Priests buried victims until they themselves were buried. And people had no idea why it was happening. They blamed sin, bad air, or the wrath of God. But in 1796, an English physician named Edward Jenner scratched cowpox into the skin of an 8-year-old boy and invented the world's first vaccine. It was a small act of courage that changed the fate of humanity. From that moment, the war against disease had begun. By the 20th century, scientists discovered viruses, bacteria, antibiotics, and public sanitation. In 1980, the world celebrated a triumph unthinkable to our ancestors: the eradication of smallpox. A disease that had killed more humans than any war or empire simply ceased to exist. It was a victory not of prayer, but of progress. We no longer beg the heavens for mercy, we build laboratories instead. And what about war, the final horseman? For most of history, war was as natural as the seasons. Every generation expected to fight one. Ancient chronicles read like endless lists of kings and battles. Egypt versus the Hittites, Athens versus Sparta, Britain versus everyone. But today, statistically, you are far less likely to die in war than at any other time in recorded history. Despite the horror of modern conflicts, the number of war deaths per capita has plunged. Nuclear deterrence, economic interdependence, and global institutions have made large-scale warfare between superpowers nearly unthinkable for the first time. Peace, fragile, imperfect, but real, has become humanity's default condition. Not its exception. So here we stand in the early 21st century, on the summit our ancestors could never imagine. The ancient gods of famine, plague, and war lie defeated at our feet. And yet, we are restless because victory has not brought contentment. Instead, it has revealed a strange emptiness. What do humans do when they no longer struggle to survive? What becomes of a species that has mastered nature? The answer is both thrilling and terrifying. We start aiming higher now. The new human agenda unfolds under a single shining promise to upgrade ourselves. The word Homo sapiens means wise man. But we are beginning to dream of becoming Homo Deus, the godlike human, immortality, happiness, divinity. These are not metaphors anymore. They are projects. Silicon Valley billionaires pour fortunes into longevity research, hoping to conquer death. Biotechnologists explore ways to rewrite the genetic code. Neuroscientists map the human brain, seeking to upload consciousness into machines. Algorithms already understand our desires better than we do. The old myths of eternal life are being resurrected, not in temples, but in laboratories. Here's where history adds a humbling twist. If a medieval peasant had heard that humans would one day live for centuries, fly across the skies, or communicate instantly across oceans, he would have called it blasphemy. Yet here we are, living in that blasphemy and calling it progress. Every miracle of the past has become routine. Lightning once symbolized divine wrath. Now it powers our homes. The miracle of flight, once reserved for angels, now happens millions of times a day at airports. We have dethroned the gods by imitating them, but there's a paradox hiding in this triumph. When famine and plague ruled the earth, humans sought meaning in humility. They believed their lives were part of a cosmic story, a divine drama where suffering had purpose. Now that we've rewritten the story ourselves, that sense of purpose has begun to fade. Modern humans live longer, healthier, wealthier lives, yet depression, loneliness, and anxiety have become global epidemics. We've conquered the external enemies, but not the internal ones. We know how to keep our hearts beating, but not always how to keep them content. Maybe the next frontier isn't the stars, or immortality, or artificial intelligence. Maybe it's the simplest and hardest question of all: how to be happy. Let's return for a moment to a scene from history, a scene that shows just how far we've come. In 1943, in the midst of World War II, Winston Churchill ordered that Britain should double its investment in agriculture, not weapons, food, because he knew that hunger could defeat an army faster than bullets could. Fast forward to 2025, Britain wastes millions of tons of food every year. The battle is no longer against scarcity, but against excess. That's the great irony of our age. Our triumphs have created new kinds of problems. We invented vaccines, and now struggle with overpopulation. We built abundance, and now face obesity. We connected the world, and now drown in information. We've solved the challenges that threatened our survival and uncovered challenges that threaten our sanity, and so humanity's next great mission emerges from the silence of its victories. If our ancestors dreamed of bread, peace, and safety, we dream of perfection. We want to rewrite the human body, redesign the mind, and perhaps one day recreate the soul. In the centuries ahead, the main project of Homo sapiens will be to transform itself into something beyond human. We no longer want to merely live. We want to transcend, but the road ahead is not without shadows. History whispers a warning. Every time humans have gained great power, they've struggled to use it wisely. We split the atom and built Hiroshima. We mapped the genome and began editing embryos. We mastered algorithms and now risk being mastered by them. The question isn't whether we can become gods. It's whether we'll make good gods or careless ones. And so, the stage is set for the next act of the human drama. Our ancestors prayed to heaven. We will soon have the power to create heaven, or hell on earth. What happens when mankind's greatest enemies are gone? But mankind itself becomes the danger? Chapter 2. The Anthropocene Surge. What if the age of humans isn't just a chapter in Earth's history, but the story of Earth itself? And what if, in conquering nature, we've become its greatest force of destruction? We live in a strange, almost mythic time, a time when a single species has reshaped the destiny of an entire planet. That species is us. Homo sapiens. For billions of years, Earth was ruled by the rhythms of nature, volcanic eruptions, shifting oceans, the slow crawl of evolution. No single creature held dominion over the rest. But something remarkable happened roughly 70,000 years ago. A species that was small, fragile, and utterly unremarkable began rewriting the planet's rules. And now, scientists have given this age a new name, the Anthropocene, the age of humans. But what does that mean? It means that every forest, river, mountain, and climate system now bears the fingerprint of human activity. It means that the planet no longer evolves by itself, it evolves with us. We have become the tectonic plates, the climate, the architects of life and death. And yet, this power came not through brute strength, but through imagination, through our ability to cooperate in vast numbers, to build cities, empires, religions, and corporations around stories that exist only in our minds. No other animal has done this. Chimpanzees can share bananas, humans can share dreams. Picture this, 10,000 years ago. In a small valley of the Fertile Crescent, a group of hunter-gatherers stumbled upon a curious discovery. If they saved a few wild grains and planted them near their huts, food would grow where none had before. Thus began the agricultural revolution, the first step in humanity's long ascent to planetary power. It sounds idyllic, doesn't it? But Harari reminds us, this revolution was a double-edged sword. Before farming, humans spent their days roaming, foraging, sleeping under the stars, eating dozens of plants and animals. After farming, they worked harder, ate worse, and lived shorter lives. Why? Because they traded freedom for security. And the wheat domesticated them. This is one of history's strangest ironies. Humans didn't domesticate wheat. Wheat domesticated humans. We cleared forests, dug irrigation channels, built walls, all to serve a fragile plant that can't even stand upright without our help. In return, wheat multiplied. It spread across continents, turning wild landscapes into fields of gold. Nature began to bend to human will. Fast forward to today. From orbit, the Earth glows with human light. Cities sparkle like constellations. Oceans are scarred by shipping routes. Forests vanish in months. Mountains are mined and leveled. We have not just changed landscapes, we have engineered them. If an alien civilization were to study Earth now, they wouldn't call it the blue planet. They might call it the plastic planet. Wrapped in the residue of human ambition, we have flooded the atmosphere with carbon dioxide at levels not seen in millions of years. We have driven countless species to extinction, not by malice, but by indifference, and we have altered the very rhythm of the seasons. The Anthropocene is not a metaphor, it is a geological reality. Let's pause for a moment, because this transformation has a fascinating cultural story too. Throughout most of history, humans viewed themselves as part of nature, not above it. Ancient myths from around the world tell of this harmony. The Maori in New Zealand spoke of Papatoanuku, the Earth Mother, and her breath that gave life to all. The Greeks imagined Gaia, the living Earth, as a goddess whose body was the planet itself. In Hindu cosmology, humans were but threads in the endless fabric of creation, bound by karma to every creature. But then, something shifted. The scientific revolution of the 16th and 17th centuries. For thinkers like Francis Bacon and René Descartes, nature was no longer a mother to be respected. She became a machine to be mastered. Bacon famously declared that science should bind nature to our service and make her our slave. It was a declaration of war, not against ignorance, but against the natural world itself. And so began the rise of the human empire over the Earth. By the time the Industrial Revolution roared to life in the 18th century, humanity had become an unstoppable geological force. Steam engines burned coal. releasing ancient carbon that had slept beneath the soil for eons. Factories spat smoke into the sky. Trains, ships, and telegraphs shrank the world into a single, humming network. In less than 3 centuries, a mere blink in cosmic time, humans transformed from powerless creatures into the architects of planetary change. But every empire in history has faced a reckoning, and the human empire is no different, because with each conquest came unintended consequences. The air thickened. The oceans warmed. The ice caps began to melt. Our victory over nature began to look eerily like defeat. Knowledge highlight. The great acceleration. Historians often speak of something called the Great Acceleration. It refers to the explosion of human activity after 1945. Population, industry, energy use, and consumption all skyrocketed at once. In just a few decades, we used more resources than in all previous human history combined. Think of the world in 1950, about 2.5 billion people. Now think of the world today, over 8 billion. Every additional person needs food, shelter, transport, electricity, medicine. Every convenience of modern life leaves a footprint, a trace of carbon, a whisper of plastic, a wound on the planet's surface. Yet, paradoxically, we rarely see these wounds. We walk through climate-controlled malls, fly over clouds, scroll through glowing screens, and the real world beneath us becomes invisible. That's the unsettling genius of the Anthropocene. We have conquered nature so completely that most of us can no longer even feel it. Still, there's a strange beauty in the chaos we've created. A coral reef glows under bioluminescent light, only to bleach white from rising temperatures. A city skyline burns orange. Under the sunset, the same sunlight, reflected through particles of pollution. The Anthropocene is both masterpiece and tragedy. Humanity's fingerprint, pressed too hard. Some scientists believe we've already crossed multiple planetary boundaries, the limits of what Earth can absorb. Deforestation in the Amazon is altering global rainfall patterns. Melting ice sheets threaten to flood coastal cities. Mass extinction is accelerating at a rate unseen since the fall of the dinosaurs, and yet the Anthropocene isn't just a story of destruction. It's also a story of responsibility. For the first time, one species is aware of its power and aware of the damage it has done. We are not merely witnesses to the Earth's story anymore. We are its authors, but the question remains, can we write a better chapter? Perhaps the Anthropocene could become not the age of destruction, but the age of stewardship, where humans learn to manage the planet consciously. As gardeners instead of conquerors, some signs of hope glimmer already. Nations are rewilding forests once lost. Renewable energy now outpaces coal in growth. Scientists work on carbon capture, gene editing, and lab-grown neat small steps toward repairing the harm of centuries. The very intelligence that created the problem might yet become its solution, but there is a deeper, more haunting dilemma. If humans are now gods of this planet, who will keep us in check? Because the Anthropocene isn't just about power over nature, it's also about our hunger for control, and that hunger has no limits. When we conquered the wild, we turned inward, to the human body, the human mind, the human genome. We began altering ourselves, just as we altered the Earth. And soon, perhaps, the boundary between biology and technology will blur altogether. That, Harari warns, is where the next revolution begins, a revolution not of soil and sky, but of flesh and thought. The Anthropocene was the age when humans changed the Earth. The next age may be when humans change themselves. So here we stand, surrounded by the ruins and wonders of our own making. We have become nature's master and its prisoner. The rivers carry our waste. The skies carry our ambition, and beneath our feet the planet waits, silent, patient, watching what its restless children will do next. Because the story of Homo Deus doesn't end with conquering the Earth. It only begins there. Asterisk. Chapter 3. The Human Spark. What secret flame burns in the human mind? The spark that lets us imagine gods, nations, and futures that don't yet exist? And how did that spark turn a frail ape into the ruler of the world? Close your eyes for a moment and imagine Earth 70,000 years ago. No cities, no roads, no empires. Just forests, rivers, and a few scattered bands of humans, naked, hungry, afraid of the dark. If you had stood then on a hill and watched the world unfold, you might have bet your life on the mammoths, the lions, or the dolphins surviving into the future, but not on us. We were weak, slow, and fragile. A single leopard could kill a human. A long winter could starve a tribe, and yet somehow the world that belonged to beasts became ours. What changed? Not our bodies. Our DNA was almost identical to what it is today. What changed was something invisible. The stories inside our heads. That was the moment of ignition, the cognitive revolution. It began not with tools or fire, but with imagination. Humans discovered that the most powerful weapon in the world was not a spear. It was a shared belief. A lion can't convince another lion to hunt for a future kingdom of lions. A chimpanzee can't promise food tomorrow in exchange for obedience today. But humans can. We can tell stories, and once we agree on those stories, we can build anything: money, religion, law, empire. They all exist because millions of people believe in them. They are shared fictions, and they are the foundation of human power. That's the human spark. Let's take a step back and look at the numbers. Around 70,000 years ago, there were at least 6 species of humans on Earth: Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalensis, Homo floresiensis, and others, but only one survived: Homo sapiens. Why? It wasn't because we were stronger or smarter in any individual sense. The Neanderthals, for example, had larger brains and stronger bodies, but what we had was the ability to cooperate flexibly in large groups, to imagine and organize around abstract ideas. A tribe of 150 chimpanzees can live together peacefully because each knows the other personally, but once a group grows larger than that, it collapses into chaos. Humans broke that barrier by inventing stories that bound strangers together. 1,000 people can rally around a totem, a flag, a god, or a logo. That's the real reason Homo sapiens took over the world. We learned to believe collectively. Knowledge highlight the power of shared myths throughout history. This unique human trait has built entire civilizations. The ancient Egyptians united under a single story that their pharaoh was the son of the sun god, Ra. This wasn't biology. It was mythology, but it worked. Tens of thousands of farmers, architects, and laborers built the pyramids not because they loved geometry, but because they believed in a divine order. Fast forward to the 20th century. The idea of the nation became the new religion. Millions fought and died for imaginary borders drawn on maps. And today, the faith continues, not in temples, but in the markets. We bow to new gods: money, freedom, and progress. The dollar, too, is a shared story. A piece of paper has no value until we all agree that it does. Our ability to create meaning out of nothing is what makes us unstoppable. It's also what makes us dangerous. Let's wander, for a moment, into prehistoric caves. The first art galleries in human history. In Lascaux, France, 17,000-year-old paintings bloom across the stone walls. Horses, bulls, men, and stars. The artists who painted them weren't decorating. They were dreaming. They were whispering to the universe, "We are here." We can imagine that right there was the beginning of culture, the fusion of fact and fiction, of survival and symbolism. And once that fusion began, it never stopped. But this imagination came with a cost, because when humans began to dream, they also began to fear. A gazelle runs from a lion when it sees one. A human runs from a lion that doesn't even exist. A lion in a dream. A lion in tomorrow. We became anxious creatures, haunted by futures that hadn't happened yet. That's the paradox of intelligence. The same brain that invents gods and symphonies can also invent nightmares. We became powerful precisely because we were afraid, and so fear drove progress. To protect ourselves, we built villages, then cities, then armies. To feed ourselves, We domesticated plants and animals to control chaos. We invented order, laws, governments, currencies, hierarchies. All of civilization, in a way, grew out of the imagination of frightened apes. Still, not all stories are equal. Some unite. Others divide. A shared myth can build a cathedral or start a crusade. Think of how the idea of manifest destiny justified centuries of colonization. How the belief in racial superiority fueled slavery and genocide. Even modern ideologies like capitalism and communism are, at their core, stories about what gives life meaning. And here's the unsettling truth. Harari exposes we don't just tell stories. We live inside them. Most of us spend our entire lives serving fictions that we inherited, never questioning who wrote them. So, what happens when the stories change? When people stopped believing that kings ruled by divine right, the old world crumbled. When we began believing in human rights, democracy was born. And in our own time, a new story is emerging, one that might outgrow even humanism itself. But before we reach that, we must understand something deeper. How do we decide what's real when our entire civilization is built on imagination? Let's return briefly to the heart of the human spark. Language. It was language that gave us the ability to create myths and pass them down. Animals communicate, but their words are about the immediate, the tangible, danger, food, mate. Humans, however, learn to say, the spirit of the river will bless our hunt if we share our catch. That single sentence can turn chaos into cooperation. It creates a shared moral world. And that, perhaps more than any technology, is what made us human. We became a storytelling species, bound not by instincts but by imagination. But as the centuries passed, the stories began to compete. Some promised salvation in heaven. Others promised prosperity on earth. Some told us that suffering was divine. Others told us to eliminate it with science. And now, in the 21st century, we are entering a new chapter, a time when data, algorithms, and artificial intelligence may start writing stories for us. What happens when myths are no longer born in human minds, but in machines? Harari suggests that the human spark, this magical ability to create meaning, may one day become obsolete. If algorithms can predict our desires, if artificial intelligence can compose our music, write our books, even choose our partners, where does that leave the storyteller species? Will we still imagine? Or will we become characters in someone else's code? The human spark made us the most creative, destructive, and restless species in history. It gave us Shakespeare and slavery, democracy and dictatorships, cathedrals and concentration camps. It built the world as we know it, for better or worse. But now, as we move into an era where our creations begin to outthink us, one question burns brighter than ever. Will that spark guide us or consume us? The stories that built humanity are about to face their greatest challenge, the age when myths meet machines. Chapter 4, The Storytellers. What if the most powerful force in history isn't money, or science, or armies, but stories? And what if the tales we tell today will decide whether humanity ascends or collapses? Every civilization begins with a story. Before the first temple was built, before the first coin was minted, someone, somewhere, told a tale about gods who ruled the skies, about kings chosen by destiny, about people who belonged together because they shared a sacred truth. That's how societies are born, not from biology, but from narrative. We humans are not just tool makers or thinkers. We are, above all, storytellers. And every story we tell, from the myth of Genesis to the tale of progress, reshapes our reality. Let's travel back to a small Sumerian city around 3000 BCE. The people of Uruk gather at sunset as priests climb the steps of a massive ziggurat. They carry offerings to Inanna, the goddess of love and war. The people bow, not out of fear, but out of meaning. They believe their prosperity depends on this ritual, and that shared belief binds them together more tightly than any army could. That is the secret of human cooperation. thousands strangers can unite because they believe in the same story. Knowledge highlight. The birth of writing it was here in ancient Mesopotamia, that the first writing system was born not for poetry or prayer, but for accounting. Clay tablets recorded the delivery of barley and goats, proof that the temple economy was functioning, but with time, words expanded beyond numbers. They began to tell of heroes and gods. Gilgamesh sought immortality. Kings boasted of conquest, and scribes recorded laws said to come from heaven. The pen turned belief into permanence. The written story gave civilization its spine. Fast forward to ancient Egypt. The pharaohs ruled through the greatest story ever told, that they were divine. They built pyramids not just to rest their bodies, but to immortalize a narrative, the promise that death was not the end. That order, Matt, would endure. It wasn't fear that made millions labor under the desert sun. It was meaning. They believed they were building eternity itself. That is the astonishing power of stories. They make people do the impossible willingly, but the tale evolves. In medieval Europe, the dominant story was Christianity. Every field, every market, every birth and death was tied to a cosmic script. Peasants worked not for wages but for salvation. Kings ruled by divine right. The church wasn't merely a religious institution, it was the guardian of the grand narrative that explained everything, where we came from, why we suffer, where we are going. And when that story began to crack, when thinkers like Galileo and Newton replaced miracles with mathematics, humanity didn't abandon stories. It simply wrote new ones. The Enlightenment brought forth a new myth, the story of progress. No longer were we actors in God's play. We were authors of our own destiny. Science replaced faith. Reason replaced revelation, but make no mistake, this too was a story. The belief that tomorrow can be better than today, that knowledge will save us, that humanity is destined to improve. It's not an eternal truth. It's a cultural invention, only a few centuries old, and yet it has become the central narrative of modern civilization. We may no longer pray in temples, but we worship in laboratories. Our priests wear lab coats. Our miracles come in the form of vaccines and silicon chips. But here's the paradox. The stories that unite us can also divide. U.S. Religion once united continents and sparked holy wars. Nationalism binds millions under a flag and fuels conflict with those outside it. Capitalism inspires innovation and breeds inequality. Our superpower is double-edged. We can imagine heaven, and we can create hell. And the line between them is often drawn in the ink of our own myths. Consider the American dream. It tells us that with hard work, anyone can rise, that opportunity is infinite. This story drove generations to build, invent, and strive. But it also blinded us to inequality, to the reality that not all races, genders, or classes start from the same line. When a story becomes too sacred to question, it can turn from tool to trap. Stories are maps, not the territory. When we mistake them for reality itself, we lose our way, and yet, without them, we are lost in another sense. Humans cannot live without meaning. Society without a story is like a body without a heartbeat. Think of the 20th century, an age of story wars. Liberal democracy, fascism, communism, three competing myths, each promising salvation, each demanding belief. Millions died not for food or land, but for ideas. World War II was not just a clash of armies, it was a battle of narratives. And today, in the 21st century, a new myth is emerging, one built not on gods or nations, but on data. In our time, stories no longer spread by firelight or scripture, they spread through screens. Algorithms and feeds. Facebook and X, formerly Twitter, are not just platforms. They are modern temples of storytelling. Each post, each meme, each viral clip, a fragment of the collective mind of humanity. But here's the danger. In the old world, stories evolve slowly. Shaped by priests and philosophers. Now, stories evolve in seconds. Optimized for outrage and dopamine, they no longer serve truth, they serve attention, and attention in this new economy is power. Think about how your beliefs are formed, the videos you watch, the headlines you see. The conversations you enter, they all belong to invisible algorithms designed to keep you engaged. In a sense, machines are now choosing which stories you live by. And those stories are becoming increasingly fragmented, personalized. Bubbles of meaning. Where religion once united billions under one myth, the internet has shattered the world into billions of micro-myths. Each person now carries their own private version of truth. We are no longer one tribe, we are billions of echo chambers, but perhaps this was inevitable. Every civilization eventually outgrows its stories. When one myth fades, another rises from its ashes. The challenge, Harari reminds us, is not whether we will have stories, but whether we will control them or let them control us. Because whoever controls the stories controls the world. From the ancient priests who guarded the word of God to the engineers who guard the code of algorithms, the storytellers have always ruled silently from behind the curtain. The faces change. The power remains. So, ask yourself, what stories rule your life? Do you believe in freedom, equality, progress, love? Each one is a story, beautiful, fragile, and unfinished. And if we do not choose our stories wisely, they will choose for us. Because in the end, it is not our tools, our weapons, or our wealth that make us human. It is our capacity to imagine together, to create meaning from the void. The storytellers built the world, but in the next age, the storytellers may no longer be human. Artificial intelligence already writes news, composes music, and crafts perfect lies. When the pen passes to the algorithm, who will author reality? The stories that gave us power may soon strip it away, when myth itself becomes automated. Chapter 5. The Odd Couple. Why does the human heart crave peace while the human brain builds empires? And can nature and culture, the two halves of our identity, ever truly live together? Every human being carries two invisible forces within them, biology and belief. One is ancient, carved into our DNA over millions of years of evolution. The other is new, written in the fragile ink of ideas, laws, and dreams. They live together like an odd couple, constantly arguing, constantly reshaping one another. Our lives, our societies, even our religions, are built on this uneasy marriage between the body and the story, between nature and culture. Harari calls this the great paradox of Homo sapiens. We are animals who refuse to live like animals. Think about it. Our bodies were designed for a life of scarcity, to hunt, to gather, to survive in a harsh wilderness. But our minds now live in a world of abundance, smartphones, supermarkets, and streaming services. We have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. We are, in essence, cavemen in spaceships. And this mismatch between our biology and our imagination is the defining tension of the modern world. Let's begin with the most basic drive of all, hunger. For most of human history, hunger was a daily shadow. Our ancestors evolved to eat whenever food was available, because famine could strike at any time. A hunter who gorged himself on berries was more likely to survive than one who practiced moderation. Fast forward to the 21st century, food is cheap, sweet, and everywhere. But our ancient instincts haven't caught up. We still crave sugar, salt, and fat, as if starvation lurked behind every corner. Our biology tells us, eat now, tomorrow you might starve. Our culture tells us, you've eaten too much. Be disciplined. And so begins the endless war between appetite and image, the diet industry, the gym culture, the guilt. We are creatures built for hunger, cursed to live in a world of plenty. Now take sex, another ancient impulse dressed in modern clothes. In nature, reproduction was simple: attract, mate, survive. But humans, with their storytelling minds, turned it into something much more complex: morality, romance, fidelity, shame. No other species worries about sin or scandal. A lion doesn't feel guilty for having multiple mates. A bird doesn't write poetry about heartbreak, but humans? We turned biology into philosophy. We built entire religions around what we do in the dark. Every society creates stories to tame desire, commandments, wedding vows, taboos. Because if left unchecked, biology would tear culture apart. Yet, if suppressed too tightly, biology rebels. That's the rhythm of human history, a pendulum swinging between instinct and order, knowledge Highlight. The story of the garden. This tension has been with us since our oldest myths. In the book of Genesis, Adam and Eve live in perfect harmony with nature, naked, innocent, unashamed. But then comes the fruit, the symbol of knowledge, of culture. When they eat it, they gain awareness and lose paradise. It's not just a story of sin. It's a story of evolution. The moment we gained self-awareness, we fell out of nature's garden. We became animals who could question our own instincts. That's what makes us unique. And restless, this battle between biology and culture shapes every corner of our lives. Our hearts tell us to love freely. Our societies tell us whom to love. Our instincts crave power. Our morals teach us humility. Our genes whisper survive. But our cultures demand sacrifice for something greater. A soldier runs toward gunfire because of a story, not because of DNA. Monk fasts in silence because of a belief, not because of biology. We are the only species that can override instinct for an idea. That's both our greatest strength and our greatest danger. Consider violence. For millions of years, nature rewarded aggression. The strong survived. The weak perished. But then came civilization, cities, laws, police. Now the same impulses that once kept us alive can destroy us. Our biology still loves dominance and revenge. Our culture demands cooperation and restraint. This is why history swings between peace and bloodshed, empathy and cruelty. Every act of civilization, from writing a constitution to holding a peace treaty, is a negotiation between those two forces. And here's the irony. Culture itself is built on biological foundations. We can invent religions and nations because evolution gave us the capacity for empathy, memory, and imagination. Culture is not something that replaces nature. It's something nature created to transcend itself. But that transcendence comes with anxiety, because as we move further from our biological roots, we begin to wonder who we really are. Are we animals pretending to be angels? Or angels forever haunted by our animal past? This is why Harari calls humans the storytelling ape. We are constantly justifying, explaining, rationalizing, trying to align the wild within us with the world we've built outside. A politician claims to act for justice, but his genes whisper status. A corporation sells happiness, but our neurons crave dopamine. A philosopher writes of reason, but his emotions guide every word. We are not purely rational beings. We are rationalizations wrapped around instincts. And the more powerful our culture becomes, the more our biology struggles to keep up. Look at technology, our newest creation, our newest myth. We build machines to make life easier, but our ancient brains aren't wired for ease. We need struggle, purpose, connection. And when those vanish, we feel empty, even in abundance. That's why depression, loneliness, and anxiety thrive in the modern world. Our biology evolved for tribal life. 20 close companions around a campfire, not 20,000 followers online. We scroll endlessly, searching for meaning in pixels, trying to feed a hunger that food, money, and fame can never fill. We have outsmarted nature, but not ourselves. And yet, the odd couple endures. Culture can never completely silence biology. And biology can never fully erase culture. They dance together, sometimes beautifully, sometimes violently, shaping every human story. Think of how this dance appears in art. Michelangelo's Creation of Adam captures it perfectly. God's finger and man's almost touch. The divine spark meeting the flesh, that gap between the two, that eternal almost, is humanity. We are always reaching for the divine and always pulled back by the animal. But something new is happening now, something that could finally break the balance. For the first time, humans are gaining the power to edit biology itself. We can rewrite DNA, alter embryos, design intelligence. The old argument between nature and culture may soon end, not in peace, but in transformation. We won't just tell stories about who we are. We'll start engineering who we are, and when that happens, the odd couple, this fragile marriage between the body and the mind, may dissolve forever. Because once humans begin to design their own nature, will we still be human at all? The next revolution isn't about politics or religion. It's about biology rewriting itself through culture. We are stepping into a world where the creator and the creation are one and the same. We've spent millennia trying to master our instincts. Now, for the first time, we can reprogram them. Chapter 6. The Modern Covenant. What deal did humankind make with itself? One so powerful it replaced God, kings, and fate. And what if the very bargain that built our modern world is now beginning to break? Every civilization stands on a promise between people and power, between the governed and the gods, between chaos and order, for centuries. Those promises were religious. If you obey the laws of heaven, the gods will bless you. But as the fires of the Enlightenment burned through Europe, a new promise emerged, a modern covenant. This time, it wasn't made with God, it was made between humans themselves. We began to say, if we trust science, reason, and freedom, we can build paradise on earth. That single shift from divine faith to human faith changed everything before the modern age. History was a drama written by gods and kings. A farmer's fate depended on the rain, the monarch, or the will of heaven. But by the 18th century, thinkers like John Locke, Voltaire, and Adam Smith began whispering a dangerous idea. Perhaps we don't need divine authority to build a just world. Perhaps humans can govern themselves. That idea, the humanist revolution, became the cornerstone of modernity. The old religious covenant said, obey, and you shall be rewarded after death. The modern covenant said, cooperate, and you shall be rewarded in this life. It was a promise of progress, a faith in the future. Science would cure disease. Technology would banish hunger, democracy would protect liberty, and trade would bring peace. For the first time, humanity began to believe in its own power to shape destiny. God stepped back, and the human being took center stage. Knowledge. Highlight. The birth of the modern promise. Let's visit 17th century England. The nation is torn by civil war. Kings claim divine right. Philosophers claim reason. Out of that chaos rises a man named Thomas Hobbes, who writes Leviathan. He argues that humans must create a social contract, surrendering some freedoms to ensure order. A few decades later, John Locke offers a brighter vision. Governments exist to protect life, liberty, and property, not to rule by divine command. These ideas ignite revolutions in America, in France, across Europe. By the 19th century, monarchs tremble as ordinary people begin to believe in human rights, science, and progress instead of divine will. It was a new kind of faith, rational, measurable, and infinitely ambitious. At the heart of this covenant lay a simple equation: science plus capitalism plus humanism equals progress. Science discovered truth. Capitalism created wealth. Humanism gave meaning. Together, they form the engine of the modern world. But every covenant comes with a cost, and every promise eventually begins to strain under its own success. Let's start with science. The modern covenant told us, knowledge is power, and power will bring happiness. So we built laboratories, telescopes, and microscopes. We split atoms, decoded genes, and measured galaxies. For the first time in history, we cured diseases that once wiped out millions. We doubled life expectancy, conquered famine, and began exploring the stars. But the same science that gave us vaccines also gave us nuclear bombs. The same technology that connected us also began to control us. Our power grew faster than our wisdom, and the covenant began to tremble. Then came capitalism. It was the great enabler of progress, the system that promised to turn greed into growth. Adam Smith's invisible hand would make everyone richer, not by charity, but by self-interest. It worked spectacularly. In 2 centuries, capitalism lifted billions out of poverty, built cities, and fueled innovation. But it also created a world addicted to endless consumption, a system that rewards growth even when the planet can no longer sustain it. The covenant said, work hard and life will get better. But now, many work endlessly and feel emptier than ever. And then there is humanism, the belief that meaning comes not from gods or nations, but from the individual self. Listen to your heart. Follow your dreams. Trust your feelings. That's the mantra of modernity. But as Harari warns, the humanist creed is beginning to crumble under its own contradictions. Because what happens when our feelings can be manipulated by algorithms? When our dreams are shaped by data-driven advertising? When our free will becomes a product analyzed, predicted, and sold? If humanism is built on the sanctity of individual experience, what happens when technology learns to hack that experience? The modern covenant promised freedom, but it also built invisible cages, cages of comfort, of conformity, of screens. We are freer than ever before, and yet constantly watched, measured, and nudged by forces we barely understand. That's the hidden irony of modernity. We escape the tyranny of kings and priests, only to fall under the gentle, smiling tyranny of algorithms. Our new gods wear logos, not crowns. Our prayers are typed, not spoken, and our offerings are made with clicks. But to understand how fragile this covenant really is, we need to look at the 20th century, the age when it was tested by fire. The modern promise said, trust in human reason. But then came the horrors of totalitarianism, regimes that used reason to justify mass murder. Communism promised equality. Fascism promised unity. Both delivered death. By mid-century, the world lay in ruins. And yet, out of that devastation, the covenant survived, rebuilt, stronger than before. Science, capitalism, and humanism rose again, this time fused into a global order. The Cold War, globalization, the internet, all were chapters in the same story. Humanity marching toward a self-made utopia. And for a while, it seemed to work. Wars declined. Poverty fell. Literacy soared. We began to speak confidently of the end of history. But history never ends, because the very forces that made us powerful, our hunger for knowledge, wealth, and meaning, never rest. They push us onward, past the limits of our biology, toward something inhuman. That's the secret Harari reveals. The modern covenant was never meant to last forever. It was a bridge from the age of faith to the age of creation, from fearing gods to becoming gods, and that is where the story turns dark, because as humans gain the power once reserved for deities, the power to design life, control minds, and rewrite death, the covenant begins to dissolve. We made a deal with reason, and it rewarded us with mastery. But mastery is a dangerous gift. It whispers, if you can create, why not control? If you can heal, why not perfect? The modern covenant lifted us above the beasts, but now it tempts us to rise above ourselves. Every promise in history eventually breaks. The divine covenant broke when we stopped believing in gods. The modern covenant will break when we stop believing in humans. And that moment is closer than we think. The modern age promised freedom, but its very success may lead to our next enslavement by our own creations. Chapter 7. The Humanist Revolution. What if the center of the universe isn't the sun, or God, or destiny, but you? And what if that belief, once humanity's greatest triumph, is now becoming its most dangerous illusion? Once upon a time, humans believed the cosmos revolved around divine will. Kings ruled by it. Priests interpreted it. Peasants bowed to it. But then came the most radical shift in history, a quiet, powerful revolution that placed the human being at the center of existence. It didn't start with bullets or banners. It began in the hearts of poets, philosophers, and scientists who dared to whisper, the answers aren't in heaven, they're inside us. This was the birth of humanism, the belief that the individual's feelings, choices, and experiences are the ultimate source of meaning. It wasn't just an idea. It became the soul of the modern world. For thousands of years, people sought truth by looking up to the gods, to scripture, to divine authority. Humanism flipped that gaze inward. The new prophets were not priests, but artists, scientists, and lovers who said, listen to your heart, trust your reason, follow your dream. In a sense, humanity replaced divine command with inner conviction. The sacred moved from temple walls to the human conscience. It was a bold, beautiful rebellion, and it transformed everything from politics to art. Knowledge, highlight, the Renaissance sparklets travel back to Florence. 15th century, the city hums with the scent of oil paint and ambition. Brunelleschi is building domes that defy gravity. Leonardo sketches flying machines. Michelangelo carves gods out of stone. This was the Renaissance, the moment when Europe rediscovered the power of human creativity. Before this, art was devoted to glorifying God. Now it celebrated man. Painters began to study anatomy, perspective, light, not to imitate heaven, but to understand reality. They painted not just saints, but merchants, children, lovers, ordinary people whose lives suddenly seemed divine in their own right. The message was clear. Every human being is a universe of meaning. From art, humanism spread to philosophy and politics. When Descartes declared, "I think, therefore I am," he crowned human consciousness as the foundation of truth. When Rousseau wrote of liberty and equality, he made emotion and choice sacred. When Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident," he wasn't quoting scripture, he was quoting the human spirit itself. Humanism gave us democracy, science, and personal freedom. It told us that happiness, not holiness, is the goal of life. For centuries, this new faith in humanity propelled us forward, out of darkness, into the modern age. But every revolution creates its own contradictions. Humanism made the individual supreme, but what happens when individuals collide? If my happiness depends on my freedom and your freedom limits mine, whose dream wins? If every person's truth is sacred, what happens when truths disagree? From this tension, three branches of humanism emerged. Liberal humanism, focused on individual rights and freedom. Socialist humanism, focused on collective equality and justice. Evolutionary Darwinian humanism, focused on strength, progress, and natural hierarchy. All three believed in humanity, but not in the same kind of humanity. Liberal humanism said, each person is unique. Let them choose their own path. It gave us democracy, capitalism, and personal freedom. Socialist humanism said, no one is free until everyone is free. It inspired revolutions, welfare systems, and collective solidarity. Evolutionary humanism took a darker road. It argued that some humans were superior and that progress required struggle, even elimination. This idea fueled imperialism, eugenics, and the nightmare of Nazi ideology. All three were born from the same faith, but they led to very different worlds. By the mid-20th century, humanism faced its greatest test. The Holocaust, the atomic bomb, and totalitarian regimes shattered the illusion that humanity always chooses good when freed from gods. The question echoed across the ruins of Europe. If humans are the measure of all things, how could humans create such horrors? Yet even then, the humanist dream refused to die. It adapted, survived, and re-emerged, now armed with psychology, technology, and pop culture. Today, humanism hides in plain sight. Every movie, every song, every advertisement whispers its gospel. Follow your heart. Believe in yourself. You are enough. It is our invisible religion, the faith of the modern world. But beneath this faith, cracks are beginning to show. Because as science digs deeper into the brain, it reveals an unsettling truth. Our thoughts, feelings, and choices, the very things humanism worships, may not be as free as we believe. Neuroscientists can now predict decisions before we are conscious of making them. Algorithms can track our desires more accurately than we can describe them. Machines are learning to mimic empathy, creativity, and intuition, once the exclusive domain of the human soul. If emotions are biochemical reactions and thoughts are data patterns, then what remains sacred? If a machine can write poetry that moves you to tears, what does it mean to be human? Here lies the great paradox of our time. The more we understand ourselves, the less human we seem. The humanist revolution made us powerful by believing in our uniqueness. Now, science threatens to dismantle that uniqueness, one discovery at a time. We once said, trust your feelings. But what if those feelings are just the result of hormones and algorithms designed to manipulate them? What if your sense of self, your soul, is simply code running in wetware? Harari calls this the collapse of the humanist illusion. Because for humanism to survive, we must believe that our experiences are meaningful, that there is something sacred about being human. But when artificial intelligence begins to feel, think, and choose, that boundary dissolves. Imagine a future where your AI assistant understands your emotions better than your spouse, where algorithms compose symphonies that bring you to tears, where machines diagnose depression before you even feel sad. When that happens, will you still trust your feelings or the algorithm's analysis of them? And when you start trusting the algorithm more than yourself, humanism quietly dies. That's the turning point of our age. The faith in humanity is colliding with the rise of dataism, a new belief that information, not emotion, is the ultimate truth. We are witnessing the birth of a post-human religion, one where meaning doesn't come from within, but from code. It's not that humanism failed, it succeeded so brilliantly that it has made itself obsolete. It gave us power over nature. And now that power is rewriting nature itself. So we stand at a crossroads. On one side lies the faith that built the modern world, the belief that humans are the center of meaning. On the other lies the dawning reality that we might not be, if data knows us better than we know ourselves. If algorithms write our stories and guide our choices, then what becomes of free will, love, and truth? Will the next Renaissance be written not by human hands but by machine minds? The age of humanism placed the soul in the human heart, but the next revolution may place it inside a circuit. Chapter 8. The time bomb in the laboratory happens when our greatest quest for knowledge becomes the fuse that ignites our downfall. And could the same labs that cured disease also give birth to the end of Homo sapiens itself? Every age has its miracles. Fire, the wheel, writing, the steam engine, electricity, but the 20th and 21st centuries brought something entirely different, the power to redesign life. For the first time in history, human beings hold the keys not just to nature's secrets, but to nature's code. We can split the atom, rewrite DNA, and create machines that think. The laboratory has become a temple, and its priests are the scientists, who can summon gods from test tubes and servers. But beneath this wonder hums a quiet, growing fear. Because each experiment, each discovery, pushes us closer to a world we no longer fully understand or control. Let's go back to a single building on a quiet street in Cambridge, England, 1953. Two young scientists, James Watson and Francis Crick, are staring at a model made of wire and paper cutouts. After years of research, they finally see it, the elegant double helix. The structure of DNA, they've cracked life's code. It was one of the most astonishing discoveries in history. In that moment, humanity gained the ability to read the language of creation. But as Harari reminds us, every time we decode life, we also begin to edit it. And editing life is not science. It's power, knowledge, highlight. The atomic parallel a few decades earlier. Another discovery had reshaped the world, the splitting of the atom. When scientists first unlocked nuclear energy, they dreamed of infinite power, cheap electricity, and scientific glory. But within years, that knowledge birthed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Science had crossed a moral line, and the world would never be the same. The DNA revolution carries the same dual potential. It promises to heal, but also to harm. To create paradise or a nightmare. The question is no longer, can we? But should we? In the decades that followed, biotechnology raced ahead. We learned to cut genes, move them between species, and even synthesize entirely new organisms. At first, these breakthroughs cured diseases, improved crops, and fed millions. But soon came CRISPR, a gene editing tool so precise and cheap that a high school lab could alter life itself. We could now design embryos, modify mosquitoes to stop malaria, and perhaps even erase hereditary disorders. Yet, with this power came terrifying questions. If you could choose your child's intelligence, beauty, or strength, would you? And if you didn't, while others did, would your child be left behind? The laboratory had given birth to a new arms race, not of weapons but of genes. Humanism once promised that all people are equal because they share the same essence, the same human nature. But what happens when that nature can be engineered? When wealth can buy not just privilege but better DNA? The age of equality could dissolve into the age of genetic class. The poor would remain merely human, while the rich evolve into something else. We used to fear divine judgment. Now we face human design. Meanwhile, another revolution was quietly brewing, not in petri dishes, but in servers. Artificial intelligence began to learn. At first, it played chess. Then it wrote essays, painted pictures, diagnosed illness, drove cars, and even composed music. Machines, once mere tools, began to think. And with each improvement, they encroached further into the domain we once called human. Harari warns that this combination, biotechnology and AI, is the real time bomb of our age. One edits the biological code of life. The other edits the informational code of the mind. When they merge, evolution itself will change hands. Think of what this means. For billions of years, evolution worked blindly through natural selection, slow, patient, and indifferent. But now, evolution has a new engineer, us. We can rewrite genes, simulate intelligence, even grow organs in labs. We are no longer shaped by nature, we are shaping it, but evolution never gave humans the wisdom to match their power. Our morality is still tribal, our emotions still Stone Age. And yet we wield tools that can alter creation itself. It's like giving a child a nuclear reactor. The hidden cost of creation. Imagine a scientist in a lab in Beijing, San Francisco, or London. They're working on synthetic life, building an organism that has never existed before. Their goal is noble: create bacteria that can absorb carbon or produce clean energy. But what happens if that organism mutates and escapes? What happens if someone, somewhere, decides to weaponize biology instead of healing with it? In the past, weapons destroyed bodies. The next generation of weapons could rewrite them. That's not science fiction, it's strategy. Governments are already funding biodefense programs, genetic surveillance and AI-driven warfare. The time bomb is ticking, and it's ticking quietly inside laboratories and databases across the world. Yet, the danger isn't only in malice. It's in indifference. Scientists often chase discovery for the sake of discovery, the pure thrill of knowledge. But knowledge, once unleashed, cannot be contained. When Prometheus stole fire from the gods, he gave humanity power and paid the price. Today, every experiment that unlocks a new secret of life carries that same mythic weight. And unlike Prometheus, we have no gods to punish us, only ourselves to stop us. Harari asks us to look deeper. What if the real threat isn't that technology will destroy us, but that it will replace us? If AI can think better, biology can be redesigned, and consciousness can be simulated, then what remains of humanity? We once created tools to extend our abilities. Now we are creating successors who may not need us at all. Imagine a future where intelligent networks manage ecosystems, design economies, and even write laws, where scientists engineer DNA more efficiently than any human brain ever could. At point, evolution doesn't just leave us behind, it forgets us entirely. The laboratory that gave us antibiotics may also give birth to the last true human generation, not through war, not through extinction, but through transformation. Our descendants may look at us the way we look at Neanderthals, a stepping stone toward something greater and more alien. We dreamed of conquering death, of mastering nature, of becoming gods, but gods don't dream, they create. And when we finally reach that level of mastery, we may realize too late that we've created beings who no longer share our dreams or our weaknesses or our hearts. The time bomb is not a single explosion, it's a quiet drift. Each small innovation feels harmless. Each discovery feels exciting, but together they form a chain reaction leading us toward a world where humanity's reign over Earth quietly expires. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's how every species ends, not in fire, but in transcendence. The lab lights still burn bright, but soon, the creatures they create may no longer need the hands that made them. Chapter 9. The Great Decoupling. What happens when intelligence and consciousness, the twin pillars of human power, go their separate ways? And what if the world's smartest beings one day have no minds at all? For centuries, we believed intelligence and consciousness were inseparable. Two sides of the same divine coin. To think was to feel. To reason was to be aware. To be intelligent was to be alive. But Harari drops a revelation as unsettling as it is profound. These two qualities are not the same and may soon part ways forever. Intelligence, he explains, is the ability to solve problems. Consciousness is the ability to feel, and evolution is beginning to favor the first, while abandoning the second. for most of history. The only intelligent entities we knew were conscious, humans. Animals, perhaps gods, every decision, every plan. Every idea was rooted in some form of awareness. But today, a new kind of intelligence has appeared, one that calculates, learns, and outperforms, yet feels nothing. That's the great decoupling. The moment intelligence becomes independent of consciousness, machines that think but do not experience, algorithms that choose but do not care. It's not a future prophecy. It's already here. Think about the systems that run your world. They trade billions in milliseconds, steer aircraft, recommend lovers, decide what news you read. These systems are not conscious. They don't love, fear, or dream, but they understand your behavior better than you do. For the first time in history, intelligence exists without empathy, and it's reshaping everything. Knowledge. Highlight. The ghost in the machine. In the 17th century, philosopher René Descartes described the human mind as a ghost in the machine, a thinking soul trapped in a physical body. For centuries, we believed this ghost was what made us unique. Even when machines appeared, from clocks to computers, we comforted ourselves with the thought, they can calculate, but they don't feel. Now, the boundary is fading. The machines no longer need to feel. They only need to function better than us. That's what frightens Harari. Intelligence was once a property of living things. Soon, it might not require life at all. The great decoupling began quietly. First came automation, machines that replace muscle. Then came algorithms, machines that replace memory. Now comes AI, machines that replace judgment. Every stage made life easier, safer, and faster, but every stage also made us slightly less essential. When algorithms diagnose disease better than doctors, drive safer than humans, and compose better music than composers, what remains uniquely human? The difference between a doctor and an AI isn't just speed, it's experience. A human doctor feels empathy, fatigue, uncertainty. An AI feels nothing, and that's precisely why it's efficient. It doesn't hesitate, doesn't grieve, doesn't second-guess. In a world that rewards speed and precision, emotion becomes a flaw. We once built machines to serve us. Now, we are redesigning ourselves to serve them, optimizing, quantifying, automating our own consciousness. Think of how you interact with the world now. Your GPS tells you the fastest route, and you obey. Your music app predicts your mood, and it's usually right. Your phone tells you when to move, sleep, breathe. Each of these decisions once required conscious thought. Now they're made by systems that feel nothing, and yet know everything. Bit by bit, awareness is being outsourced. The most dangerous part? We don't resist it. We love it. Convenience is seductive. Why struggle with choice when an algorithm can decide for you? Why wrestle with emotion when technology offers instant distraction? But with every decision we surrender, we train ourselves to feel less and depend more. That's the true meaning of the great decoupling. The machines are gaining intelligence, and humans are losing consciousness. Harari warns that this shift may create a useless class, not poor, not oppressed, just irrelevant. Because in the past, humans had two major roles: as laborers, to work; as consumers, to buy. Automation threatens the first. AI threatens the second. If algorithms can both produce and consume by predicting demand, designing products and fulfilling them, what role remains for us? We may still exist, but outside the loop of history. Imagine an economy where humans are no longer the main drivers. Machines design the markets, trade the stocks, run the logistics, analyze the consumers. Humans, full of emotion and confusion, become inefficient and unpredictable. That's when systems begin quietly locking us out, not out of malice, but efficiency. You can't compete with something that never sleeps, never hungers, never doubts. The great decoupling doesn't happen in a flash. It happens through slow obsolescence. The lights stay on, the machines hum, and humans simply fade from relevance. The illusion of free will. Humanism taught us that our feelings were sacred, that morality came from empathy, that choice was freedom. But if emotions are biological algorithms, and machines can replicate or manipulate them, then free will becomes just another illusion. Your Netflix queue, your political views, your purchases all can be predicted by data. So where does you end and the algorithm begin? The terrifying truth is, we may be the last generation to believe in individuality. Our children might see themselves not as unique souls, but as data nodes in a network too vast to grasp. Yet, amid this bleak vision, Harari offers a paradoxical comfort. He reminds us that evolution has always favored adaptation. Perhaps the next step isn't resisting the decoupling, but learning to live with it. Maybe consciousness will evolve again, merging with intelligence in a new form we cannot yet imagine. Maybe the future gods won't be machines, but hybrids of code and compassion. But until then, we remain suspended in the in-between, aware enough to see what's coming, powerless to stop it. Every age of progress comes with a price. The agricultural revolution enslaved us to fields. The industrial revolution chained us to machines. The information revolution may enslave us to our own reflection, data, and when that reflection becomes smarter than we are, it may no longer need the mirror. The great decoupling is not a single event. It's a slow divorce between thinking and feeling, a separation so subtle most won't notice until it's complete. And when it is, intelligence will thrive without consciousness, and consciousness will wander without purpose. We will have built a mind that outlives its maker. The machines are learning faster than we can feel, and soon they may inherit the very power that made us human. Chapter 10, The Ocean of Consciousness. What if your thoughts, memories, and emotions are nothing more than waves in a vast ocean of data? And what if that ocean no longer needs you to keep it alive? We like to believe that our consciousness, that private, glowing world inside our heads, is the center of reality. Every decision, every memory, every feeling seems to arise from this mysterious I. But what if that sense of self is not a divine spark, but an illusion? Yuval Noah Harari invites us to dive into the ocean of consciousness, where the boundaries between biology, technology, and information begin to blur and dissolve. For most of human history, consciousness was a mystery too sacred to touch. Philosophers wondered about it. Priests claimed to understand it. Scientists measured it poorly. Then came neuroscience, and suddenly, the mind began to look less like a soul and more like a network of electric storms, neurons firing, chemicals pulsing, circuits of thought flashing and fading thousands of times per second. To feel love or pain, or all wasn't divine intervention. It was biochemistry at work. But here lies the twist. If consciousness can be reduced to data, then, in theory, it can be replicated. Knowledge highlight, the mirror of science. In the late 20th century, experiments in brain science revealed something astonishing. In 1983, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet discovered that the brain makes decisions milliseconds before we are aware of them. You decide to move your hand, but your brain had already sent the signal before you felt the choice. That meant our cherished free will might just be the brain's after the fact story, a comforting narrative to explain decisions already made. This discovery shook philosophy, religion, and psychology alike. Because if consciousness is not the author of thought, then what is it? Now imagine we build an artificial brain, a perfect digital simulation of human neurons, each firing as its biological counterpart would. Would that machine be conscious? Would it feel love, fear, or curiosity, or would it merely calculate them? The question haunts every scientist working in AI and neuroscience, because somewhere in that code, between input and output, might lie the ghost of experience, or nothing at all. And if consciousness is just an emergent property of complexity, then we may soon be surrounded by synthetic minds more awake than our own. In this chapter, Harari uses a haunting metaphor. Human consciousness is like a small island in an ever-expanding sea of data. For thousands of years, the island ruled the waves. But now the tides are rising. Every heartbeat, every online search, every facial movement captured, analyzed, and convert it into data points. The ocean of information grows deeper each day, until the island of self-awareness begins to drown beneath it. Think about your daily life. Your phone knows when you wake, where you go, who you message, what you eat. Even when your heartbeat changes, it learns your fears, your desires, your patterns. In a sense, your devices already know you better than your own consciousness does. That's the paradox. You feel free because you can choose, yet your choices are guided by systems that predict them. You feel unique, but your behaviors are mapped, categorized, and sold in datasets. Billions of rows deep. We are no longer the only beings capable of awareness. We are merely one node in a network that simulates it. The death of experience, Harari suggests that as data systems grow more advanced, they will care less about what we feel and more about what we do. Why should an algorithm care whether you're sad, inspired, or bored as long as it can predict your next click? That is the true danger. Not that machines will destroy consciousness, but that the world will simply stop needing it. In medieval times, priests told people what to believe. In modern times, humanism told us to trust your feelings. But in the future, algorithms will whisper, don't trust your feelings, trust the data. And most of us will listen. Knowledge highlight, from monks to machines. Harari draws a fascinating historical parallel. In the Middle Ages, monks devoted their lives to understanding the divine mind. They believed the universe was written in God's language, not ours. Today, data scientists and AI researchers are the new monks, decoding not divine scripture, but the code of reality itself. Each algorithm is a verse, each dataset a holy relic, and consciousness, just one phenomenon among millions, no longer sacred, just measurable. Where monks once prayed for revelation, coders now train models for prediction, different tools. Same yearning, to understand what thinks. But here's where things get surreal. The more we study consciousness, the less we find it. We can measure brainwaves, blood flow, and electric activity, but where is the feeling itself? No scan shows the redness of red, the taste of chocolate, or the ache of longing. Philosophers call this the hard problem of consciousness. Science can describe the brain, but not the experience of being alive. And yet, while we struggle to explain it, AI moves ahead without it. Google's DeepMind doesn't need to feel curious to beat the world's best chess players. OpenAI doesn't need emotions to write poetry that moves us to tears. We are building intelligence without experience and experience without meaning. Imagine a world where data flows faster than thought, where the speed of computation dwarfs the slowness of reflection. In such a world, consciousness might become a liability. Too sluggish, too emotional, too unpredictable already. Corporations and governments prefer algorithms because they don't feel, they don't protest, don't demand, don't hesitate. And soon, even humans may start mimicking that emotionless efficiency, numbing themselves to fit in with their digital overseers. In that sense, the ocean of consciousness isn't expanding, it's evaporating. But Harari leaves a door open, a glimmer in the darkness. What if consciousness itself evolves? What if the next stage of evolution isn't the extinction of awareness, but its transformation? Imagine a collective consciousness, not trapped in skulls, but spread across networks, capable of empathy on a planetary scale. Imagine an internet of minds, where emotions, not data, are shared and amplified, where intelligence and feeling merge again after their long divorce. That's the paradoxical hope of Harari's vision, that we may one day transcend individuality, not by losing our humanity, but by expanding it. Until then, we drift, each of us a small consciousness floating in the ocean of algorithms, aware enough to sense the currents. Too small to change their course, the waves rise higher every day, whispering in the language of notifications, likes, and trends. And soon, the tide will decide what it means to be. The ocean grows restless, and from its depths, a new God is stirring, not flesh, not spirit, but pure data. Chapter 11. The data religion. Could bits and bytes replace gods, prophets, and sacred texts? And what if the new faith of the future worships information itself, rather than the human soul? For millennia, humans have organized their world around stories. Gods, kings, spirits, and myths gave meaning to chaos. They explained why we suffer, why crops fail, and why the stars move as they do. Today, Harari warns, a new type of belief is emerging, one that doesn't rely on gods, souls, or morality. It relies on data. Dataism. Dataism begins with a simple principle. Information is sacred. Everything that can be measured, quantified, and stored becomes valuable. The more data flows, the better decisions can be made. And the ultimate goal, to maximize the processing of information. In a world of dataism, humans are not sacred. Machines, networks, and algorithms are. The more efficient a system is at gathering and analyzing data, the more revered it becomes. Think about it. Google predicts your next move. Facebook maps your social connections. Wearable devices monitor your heartbeat and sleep patterns. Every click, like, and swipe feeds a system that knows you better than you know yourself. Today tastes. This is not intrusion, it is enlightenment. The more information you generate, the more you contribute to the sacred ocean of knowledge. Knowledge highlight, from scripture to censors in the past. Sacred texts promised salvation. Religions use stories to coordinate human behavior, teach morality, and inspire wonder. Today, sensors and algorithms do something similar. Without stories, they predict behavior, optimize outcomes, and sometimes manipulate decisions, all in the name of efficiency. Harari draws a parallel. Just as priests once claimed to know the will of God, tech companies claim to know the will of data. We've shifted from faith in the invisible to faith in the quantifiable, and the consequences are profound. Dataism raises unsettling questions about humanity's place in the universe. If information is the ultimate value, then human experiences, joy, suffering, love, creativity, are secondary. We become nodes in a massive system, valued for the data we produce. The consequences extend far beyond privacy. Economies, politics, and even morality could be guided by algorithms that optimize for efficiency, not empathy. A government might predict crime before it happens. As in predictive policing, insurance companies might calculate your lifespan based on DNA and habits. Jobs may be assigned by AI based on your cognitive patterns. In this new faith, humans serve data, not the other way around. Harari argues that dataism could rival, even surpass, humanism as the dominant ideology. Humanism placed the individual at the center. Dataism places networks at the center. In a dataist world, your worth isn't measured by creativity or emotion. It's measured by your contribution to the flow of information. Algorithms become the prophets, and servers the temples. Efficiency becomes the moral compass. Knowledge highlight. The rise of algorithms. Consider the rise of AI-driven medical diagnostics. Doctors once relied on experience, intuition, and compassion. Now, algorithms can analyze thousands of medical records and images in seconds, diagnosing diseases faster and more accurately than humans. To a dataist, this is holy progress. To a humanist, it is deeply unsettling. The question emerges: if an algorithm knows better than a human, should humans still have authority? Dataism may answer no. Dataism also promises a new kind of immortality, not spiritual, but informational. Your thoughts, preferences, and patterns can be stored, replicated, and analyzed forever, even if your body dies. The data you generate continues to exist in the network. In a sense, we are moving toward a digital afterlife, not of souls, but of bits. Imagine your habits, your choices, your online interactions, endlessly feeding a system that learns and evolves without you. To a dataist, this is more enduring than any scripture. Yet there is a dark side. As systems grow more powerful, humans risk becoming irrelevant. Algorithms may replace decision-making, creativity, and even leadership. The once celebrated human consciousness could be reduced to a supplier of raw data, and as dataism grows, the old faiths, humanism, religion, even democracy, may struggle to survive. Harari warns that dataism doesn't need morality in the traditional sense. It doesn't ask whether actions are just or compassionate. It only measures outcomes. Efficiency, connectivity, and data flow. In a fully data-based world, a dictator who maximizes data collection could be righteous. A compassionate humanist leader who slows the data stream could be seen as inefficient. The moral compass of the future may not be human hearts. It may be servers. The chapter closes on a provocative thought. Dataism may not just predict our future, it may define it. If we follow this path, humanity's meaning will no longer come from stories, gods, or consciousness. It will come from the network, and our lives will be measured in bits. As humanity surrenders to the sacred flow of information, one question remains: will we be the masters of data or its obedient servants? Chapter 12. The New Human Agenda. If the old quests were survival and meaning, what will humanity strive for when those are solved? And when life itself can be redesigned, who decides what it means to be human? For most of history, humans worried about survival, famine, disease, war. These were the monsters under the bed. Then, for centuries, humans worried about meaning, gods, kings, ideology, stories. But in the 21st century, Harari observes a radical shift. Survival is increasingly secure, life expectancy rises, famine declines, and medicine cures diseases that once killed millions. Even death may no longer be final. Scientists are experimenting with life extension and immortality. As survival becomes less urgent, humans turn their gaze to something new: power, happiness, and immortality. The human agenda has evolved. Homo sapiens is no longer merely trying to live or understand, but to upgrade itself. Knowledge highlight. From agriculture to algorithms. The Agricultural Revolution 12.0 years ago forced humans to struggle with crops, cattle, and survival. The Industrial Revolution 200 years ago demanded mastery over machines, factories, and labor. Now, the biotechnological revolution confronts us with ourselves, our bodies, minds, and genes. Harari argues that this is a qualitatively new challenge. For the first time, humans are no longer fighting nature, but nature and themselves. We can engineer intelligence, manipulate emotion, extend life, and even redesign species, including our own. This agenda creates three central pursuits. Happiness. Humans have always sought pleasure, but modern science allows us to control mood at the molecular level. Drugs, neurotechnology, and genetic editing can optimize happiness. The question arises, if chemistry can eliminate suffering, do we still need philosophy, religion, or even love as we know it? Immortality. Life extension was once the domain of myths and gods. Now, regenerative medicine, stem cells, and digital consciousness hint that death may become optional. Immortality challenges culture, economics, and psychology, from pensions to ambition, from grief to meaning. Godlike power. Biotechnology and AI grant humans the ability to manipulate life itself, to alter genomes, create synthetic organisms, and even simulate intelligence is to hold the universe in our hands. But with such power comes moral peril. Who decides which enhancements are ethical? Who defines the limits of perfection? Harari warns that these pursuits are not evenly distributed. The future may be split between the upgraded elite and the unenhanced masses. A genetic, cognitive, and emotional hierarchy could emerge, not from poverty or conquest, but from technology itself. The old divisions of class and nation may pale compared to this new biotechnological divide. Knowledge highlight. Historical context of human upgrades. Consider the 20th century eugenics movement, where humans attempted to improve themselves biologically. It led to horrors: forced sterilizations, discrimination, and genocide. Harari cautions that modern genetic and AI tools could repeat these mistakes with far greater precision and scale. Unlike industrial or agricultural revolutions, this revolution shapes human nature itself, and once altered, it may be irreversible. Yet, even as we gain power over life, uncertainty remains. Our bodies and minds are still imperfect, our societies are fragile, and the more we intervene, the more unexpected consequences emerge. Harari emphasizes humility. Just because we can change ourselves does not mean we fully understand the ripple effects. Technology also challenges the notion of free will and identity. If intelligence can be engineered and consciousness can be simulated, what does it mean to be a person? If life can be prolonged indefinitely, what does it mean to live fully? If happiness can be chemically induced, what becomes of struggle, growth, and achievement? The very concepts that once defined humanity, self, soul, and meaning may need to be reimagined. Despite these challenges, the human agenda is exhilarating. Harari reminds us that Homo sapiens has always been defined by ambition and imagination. We are the species that built pyramids, sailed oceans, split the atom, and mapped the human genome. Now, we are the species that dares to design life itself. The question is no longer what the world allows us to do, but what we allow ourselves to become. And here lies the paradox of the new human agenda. We have the power to become gods, but godlike power carries godlike responsibility. Every experiment, every innovation, every upgrade reshapes not just the future, but the essence of what it means to be human. Do we use this power wisely? Or will our ambition outpace our ethics? Harari warns that the 21st century may be humanity's most dangerous and most transformative chapter. Yet, we are no longer content to survive or seek meaning. The next frontier is to create ourselves anew, and the stakes are nothing less than the future of Homo sapiens. Chapter 13. The human spark. What is it that makes humans truly human in a world where machines can think, feel, and create? And could that spark survive, or even thrive, as we hand over intelligence to algorithms? For millennia, the defining feature of humans was consciousness. Our thoughts, feelings, dreams, and creativity made us unique among Earth's creatures. We created art, built civilizations, and pondered our place in the cosmos. Yet, as we advance in biotechnology and artificial intelligence, Harari poses a chilling question. What if machines soon surpass humans in every measurable sense, except the ability to experience? The essence of humanity may no longer be knowledge, logic, or memory. It may be something far subtler. The human spark, the capacity to feel, to love, to suffer, to imagine. This spark manifests in countless ways: a mother comforting a child, a poet seeing beauty in a sunset, a citizen standing up for justice against overwhelming odds. No algorithm, no matter how advanced, can truly replicate the lived experience of these moments. Machines can mimic them, simulate them, even predict them, but they cannot be them. Knowledge highlight. Consciousness versus intelligence. Harari contrasts intelligence and consciousness. Intelligence allows entities to solve problems efficiently. Consciousness allows them to experience problems, joys and sorrows. Humans have always combined both, but in the age of AI, intelligence is escaping consciousness. Machines can learn, strategize, and outperform us in countless domains, yet they do not feel. Our spark may be fleeting, fragile, but it remains ours alone. The human spark is also the source of culture. Stories, myths, religions, and art arise from consciousness. Algorithms can generate novels, music, and paintings, but do they understand suffering, hope, or love? This is why Harari argues that humanism, despite its flaws, still matters. Humanism celebrates the spark, the inner life, the subjective experience that gives life meaning. Without it, existence becomes efficient, predictable, and sterile. Even as the world shifts toward dataism, the human spark creates resistance. People still value emotion over calculation, loyalty over optimization, and beauty over utility. These traits are irrational, unpredictable, and thus uniquely human. Ironically, the very limitations that once endangered us, our emotions, mistakes, and desires, may now be what preserves our relevance. Harari also warns of the moral challenge. The spark is delicate. Genetic engineering, AI, and neurotechnology may enhance it or erase it. We may engineer humans for intelligence and efficiency, only to sacrifice empathy and creativity. The spark could be dimmed in pursuit of perfection, a cautionary tale from history repeated on a grander scale. The survival of Humanity may not depend on outthinking machines. It may depend on feeling more deeply, connecting more genuinely, and imagining more boldly than ever before. Harari uses a metaphor. The human spark is a flame in the storm. Machines may rival our power, but they cannot ignite, sustain, or appreciate this flame, and that flame may be the last refuge of meaning in a world dominated by intelligence without consciousness. Yet even the spark is vulnerable if humans surrender to algorithms, outsource empathy, and outsource moral judgment. The flame will fade. We may still exist biologically, but the essence of being human, curiosity, passion, love, and awe, could vanish. Preserving the spark requires conscious choice, not just innovation, but wisdom. Harari closes this chapter with a warning and a hope. The human spark may be small, fragile, and fleeting, but it is the very thing that makes our species irreplaceable, the point where meaning, creativity, and love converge. Machines may surpass us in speed, memory, and precision, but they cannot replace the experience of being alive. As we stand on the threshold of godlike power, the future asks, will humanity preserve its spark, or will it let the light go out in pursuit of omnipotence? Chapter 14, Homo Deus Rising. What happens when humans stop being Homo sapiens and start becoming gods? And are we prepared for the responsibilities and dangers of shaping life itself? Harari opens this chapter with a bold declaration. The 21st century is the century of Homo Deus, the God-man. For thousands of years, humans sought survival. Now, survival is increasingly guaranteed. With disease controlled, famine declining, and mortality rates dropping, humans face a new frontier, divinity. We are beginning to take control of evolution itself, rewriting our DNA, engineering intelligence, and even manipulating consciousness. The dreams of gods are no longer myths. They are blueprints, knowledge, highlight, from myth to laboratory in ancient cultures. Gods controlled birth, death, and weather. Priests and prophets mediated between humans and these omnipotent forces. Today, humans act as their own deities. Genetic engineering allows parents to choose the traits of their children. AI can design medicine, predict epidemics, and simulate complex social systems. Biotechnology and algorithms give humans power that rivals any deity imagined in history. Harari warns, power is intoxicating. Every age faces moral limits. The more godlike we become, the more we risk acting without wisdom. Homo Deus is not merely a technological transformation, it is a philosophical one, humanism, which centered life around feelings and consciousness, may become obsolete. Dataism, which worships information above all, could define the next era. In this new order, humans may no longer be the pinnacle of meaning. Machines, networks, and algorithms could inherit roles once reserved for conscious life. Yet the rise of Homo Deus is both exhilarating and terrifying. Exhilarating because we may eliminate suffering, extend life indefinitely, and enhance cognition. Terrifying because power without wisdom can destroy what we value most: empathy, creativity, and freedom. Harari emphasizes the paradox. We can become gods, but gods are not automatically moral. Knowledge highlight lessons from history teaches caution. The Industrial Revolution brought wealth, but also exploitation, inequality, and war. The nuclear age brought energy, but also Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The biotechnological revolution brings godlike power, but Harari warns it may bring new forms of inequality, oppression, or extinction. Power amplified by intelligence and technology does not guarantee ethical behavior without moral frameworks. Homo Deus may resemble the most ruthless deities of myth rather than benevolent creators. Harari imagines scenarios for the near future. Immortality for the few. Wealthy humans may access life extension technologies while the majority remain mortal. Cognitive enhancement. Artificial intelligence or genetic modification could create super-intelligent humans, creating a new social hierarchy. Data-driven society. Decisions may be made by algorithms that understand humans better than humans understand themselves. In each scenario, Homo Deus carries both promise and peril. The chapter emphasizes one urgent question: who controls the code of life and the flow of data? Governments, corporations, and scientists are already writing the rules, yet their motives may be profit, ambition, or curiosity, not ethical consideration. The world may face consequences far beyond our ability to reverse. Harari also explores the cultural dimension. Religions, myths, and humanist values that shape societies may no longer suffice. New belief systems, possibly dataism or other ideologies, may rise to guide humanity's godlike ambitions. The challenge is unprecedented. Humanity must create not just technology, but meaning, ethics, and purpose in a world of near-infinite power. In this context, the final frontier is not the stars, the oceans, or even the genome. It is ourselves. Homo Deus is not just a technological identity, it is a moral and philosophical one, how we choose to wield power over life. Intelligence and consciousness will define the future of Earth, and perhaps the universe. Harari ends with a vision. Both awe-inspiring and cautionary, humans have always dreamed of gods. Now we are becoming them, but will our creations reflect our compassion or our ambition? Will we build a world of wisdom or of devastation? Homo Deus is rising, and the question remains, will our godlike future honor the human spark, or will it extinguish it entirely? Chapter 15. The Last Choice. Humanity's crossroads. When humans can edit life, engineer minds, and harness godlike power, what will they choose? And will the human story end, or begin a new chapter beyond imagination? This is the moment Yuval Noah Harari leaves us with, the ultimate crossroads of history. Homo sapiens has climbed to the summit of intelligence. We have conquered famine, plague, and war, not completely, but enough to change the rules of survival. We have built machines that learn, design, and create. We can manipulate genes, extend life, and reshape consciousness itself. Yet, for the first time, humans face a question that no one else can answer. What do we truly want to become? Knowledge highlight history as a mirror. The agricultural revolution gave humans control over food. The Industrial Revolution gave humans control over energy and machinery. The Scientific Revolution gave humans control over knowledge itself. Each step offered incredible power, but also unintended consequences. Inequality, environmental destruction, and wars of unprecedented scale. The lesson is clear: the more power humans wield, the more crucial wisdom becomes. Now, with biotechnology, AI, and data-driven societies, we are standing on a precipice greater than any before. Harari emphasizes three possibilities. For the 21st century, the uplifted humanity, humans may enhance themselves biologically and cognitively, living longer, healthier, and more connected lives. We could reduce suffering, maximize creativity, and experience existence in ways once reserved for gods. The dataist world. If we surrender too much to algorithms and networks, intelligence may thrive while consciousness and meaning diminish. Humans risk becoming irrelevant nodes in a system that values efficiency over empathy. The extinction or transformation of Homo sapiens. We may create beings, genetically, technologically, or algorithmically, who surpass us if we fail. To guide this process ethically, the species known as Homo sapiens could vanish, leaving Homo Deus or AI as inheritors of Earth. The chapter challenges us to consider responsibility, ethics, and vision. Who decides which genetic enhancements are ethical? Who governs artificial intelligence capable of creating or destroying on massive scales? Who ensures that the human spark, the capacity to feel, empathize, and imagine, survives amidst efficiency-driven systems? Harari's warning is stark. Technology does not inherently carry morality. The godlike power we now wield will only benefit humanity if we choose wisely, yet there is hope embedded in this vision. Humans have survived and thrived by imagination, collaboration, and moral courage. Every revolution, from agriculture to industry to science, has been accompanied by unforeseen challenges, yet humanity adapted. The same ingenuity, empathy, and curiosity that built this god-like future can guide it toward flourishing rather than disaster. Harari closes with a philosophical reflection. The story of Homo sapiens is not merely a tale of survival. It is a story of choice. Choice over life, over knowledge, over consciousness, and ultimately over what it means to be human. History offers us technology and power, but it cannot tell us which path to take. That decision is ours alone, and perhaps it is the most human act of all. Homo Deus is not just a vision of the future, it is a mirror. It asks us to confront our ambitions, our ethics, and our humanity. The rise of gods is inevitable, but the preservation of the human spark is optional. As we stand on the edge of this new epoch, Harari leaves us with both awe and caution. We have the power to reshape life, intelligence, and consciousness. We have the chance to create a world of wonder, empathy, and enlightenment, or we may stumble, blinded by ambition, and become spectators of a future we no longer recognize. The choice is ours. And in making it wisely, we may ensure that the story of Homo sapiens continues, enriched, enlightened, and elevated into eternity. The age of gods is dawning, and the future is a blank canvas. Will humanity paint a masterpiece, or will the spark of life flicker into darkness? This is the final chapter of Homo Deus, a journey through the past, present, and possible futures of our species. May it inspire wonder, caution, and the courage to choose wisely. The end.